Good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Chris Sutton. I work for the Field and Stream Erie store. I'm the fishing sales leader, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm here to do a steelhead clinic, Steelhead Fishing 101. I've been fishing for steelhead since 1982. So I've seen it all since the beginning of the stocking programs in Pennsylvania and Ohio, all the way to present. My fishing career spans from tournament fisherman on Lake Erie for walleye, charter captain on Lake Erie for walleye. I guided steelhead on the Rocky River for a private outfitter for several years, and I've also guided steelhead fishermen on the Grand and Chagrin Rivers on a limited basis. But I've been at the cutting edge of steelhead fishing since its inception. I picked up on things as fishing from A to Z in steelhead began. I'm here just to, today in this seminar, I'm going to give some basic information, basic instruction, and tips on how you can improve your steelhead catch, or even if you're just starting out. The steelhead fishing is one of the best opportunities for fishermen in Northeast Ohio and Northwest Pennsylvania that there is. You can use, you go out, buy a pair of waders, buy a noodle rod, reel, a vest, and be out fishing for under $300 today. And you have 8 months of fishing available to you as a shore-bound fisherman. One of the best shore-bound fisherman opportunities around. I've seen it advance from going out fishing and nobody's been out on the rivers for weeks. You go fishing for weeks and weeks, not seeing other fishermen, to what it is today. And today, there's thousands of people taking advantage of this fishery. Within 2 hours of Meadville, you have world-class steelhead fishing. The best steelhead fishing in the United States. I'm from Ohio, and all of my fishing experience has been on the Ohio streams, I would say at a rate of 90%. I have fished Pennsylvania. It's a small stream fishery, clear water. It's a little bit different than the Ohio streams. If you ever get the chance, you need to go up and expand into Ohio and try that fishery. There's a lot of public water available. And I would also expand into New York. They have many, many streams that hold steelhead. So just don't limit yourself to the PA streams. I mean, they are very crowded. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's bad fishing there. It's really good fishing, but it will get crowded. And if you want to avoid crowds, you could spread out east and west from the Pennsylvania area. To start, what you're going to need is you're going to need a nice limber rod. I have here a 10'6" noodle rod. Okay, this is used. You need a long rod to absorb the shock of the fish, because typically we're using really light line, and you could catch steelhead up to about 16 pounds in the local streams. So you start with a good limber rod that'll take the shock of the fish away. You're going to use a light, no heavier than 8-pound line, 6 to 8 pound main line on your spinning rod. And when it comes to line, you have to be careful about your line selections. You're going to need a line that's buoyant. And what I mean by that, it's going to tend to float to the surface. It's not going to sink under the water. I would definitely avoid the new fluorocarbon fishing lines. And there's a difference between lines and leaders, okay? Because I'm going to get into fluorocarbon leader. The reason that you need a buoyant line is so that when you're drifting through the holes with a float, you could mend your line, and you'll be able to lift a buoyant line off the water to mend that line upstream of the float, because the idea is that you want this float to go slower than the existing current for a proper presentation to the fish in the streams. If this float is going faster than the current at any time, you will not catch a steelhead. They will not hit an egg sac. They will not hit a trout bead. Okay, they will not hit a jig. So it's very important to use a floating line to get that proper presentation. The length of the rod also helps you with your proper presentation, because you can hold your rod up. It has a high angle to the float, and then as it's drifting down through the hole, you can just mend it upstream of the float to get a slow presentation. You can tell that you have the proper presentation by looking at your float and watching the bubble or debris in the stream go faster than the float. If the debris and bubbles are going faster than the float, you have a good presentation. I just lost this. So here's another aspect that I just want to clear this up as far as line and leaders. I just told you to stay away from fluorocarbon line, and you want to go to a floating line. I use fluorocarbon leader. This is 100% fluorocarbon, and I'm only using a section of this on my line. I have it swiveled in. So at this point down to that trout bead is fluorocarbon. And this came out, I want to ballpark it, 15 years ago into the steelhead market. And if you're steelhead fishing, I highly recommend that you use a fluorocarbon leader attached to any of your line, because it does work. When it first came out, I was skeptical. A friend and I went out and tested on a hole that contained over 200 fish on a perfectly clear water conditions with identical rods, identical line thickness to the fluorocarbon leader that we used. And the fluorocarbon leader rod outfished the non-fluorocarbon leader rod 2 days in a row at a rate of about 15 to 1. So that's how important this leader is. And again, don't confuse it with the main line, because it's only at the business end. It's this section down that I have this in. So I always fish with this, no matter what anymore. It'll improve your catch ratio. If you're an entry-level guy that's just coming into the sport, this is gonna help you beyond your wildest dreams. You really need to use this. I brought an example of a floating or buoyant line. This is Siglon. Okay, this is a buoyant line that'll help you give proper presentation to the fish. You can also use Sunline, has a floating line. Tecton's probably one of the best. It's a German-made line. I personally like to use 10-pound Tecton. Sensei makes a good buoyant line, and Sunline. I'm using 8-pound main. Typically it's an 8-pound main line. I rarely go less than this, because all I do is change my leader. So I just keep changing the business end. I use an 8-pound main, and if the river conditions clear, I just go down. So if it's green to muddy conditions, I use an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, and as the rivers clear and go lower, I step it down to 6-pound. Then I step it down to 4-pound fluorocarbon. I won't go less than 4 pound, because after that point, you're not going to land too many fish on line less than 4-pound test. It's just not going to make sense to do that. So I'll take the less bites with the 4-pound line and just land what I can. The best times to go. It's an 8-month season. Right now, they're catching really good numbers of steelhead around the streams in Erie, PA on both sides and on the beach, and they're casting spoons, Cleos, KO wobblers on the beach, spinners. They're using light jigs below floats. They're using light jigs below floats and single eggs, okay? And this is a trout bead. It's a representation of a single egg, which I recommend over single eggs, actually. If I was fishing on the beach with a float, I would use a trout bead over a single egg because you don't have to keep changing the eggs out. It may cost you a couple fish, but the trade-off for costing you a couple fish is you're constantly in the water. You never have to stop to rebait or anything like that. You're in there. You miss the bite, you're back in there again. You never have, if the egg whites out and becomes too white from absorbing water, you don't have to change it. It always maintains its same color. In low water conditions upstream of any river, I found that the trout bead works great. You just rig it 1.5 inches above the hook. So you use a small hook and you slide that up on the line, and that's all there is to it. You shot in below your float, so you anchor your float just like you would an egg sack. This is kind of a new thing. It's been around about 7 years, heavy, and again, I'm a born skeptic. I was skeptic of it at first, but I'm a believer now, and I see the value of having the trout beads. It's easy. I don't have to deal with making single eggs or buying single eggs. I buy the trout beads, and they work just fine. You could definitely catch steelhead with these things. You could get trout beads in a kit. It has a full kit that'll cover many different river color conditions. You can use these upstream in muddy conditions. You're just going to go to a chartreuse bead, and as things clear, you're going to go to pink. Then you're going to go to the more natural colors. And we actually have these at the Field and Stream shop in Erie. It's a great little kit. Or you could get the individual packs. If you find that you have a specific color that you have a preference with, you could just go buy the packs to replenish it and have them in your vest. And it's a great option if you don't want to deal with the salmon eggs, okay? And it will put fish up on the bank. So again, you know, floating line, fluorocarbon leader, long rod, a good reel with a fine drag is going to get you started. And this isn't a top-end rod. I mean, this is a mid-range rod. I'm not buying G Loomis's or anything like that. I usually spend, this is about $100 rod and $100 reel out of the gate. I look for a drag that's smooth, and then I look for a rod that's got backbone, the set hook, but limber enough to fight the fish. So you could see that most of, you know, I have a nice strong backbone, okay? This also allows me to cast, okay? If you have a true noodle which has flexibility down to the butt, you're gonna be able to go to lighter lines. It's not my style, but I know a lot of guys that do it. You know, they'll run 6-pound line as opposed to 8. And this is just a personal preference, and in my, you know, from my experiences. Any questions on what I just gave you at the beginning? No questions? Okay. I'm going to give you guys, this is one of my favorite techniques, okay? It's a backup technique if you want to call it that, but I love fishing with plugs for steelhead. I use flatfish, quick fish. There's a lure that they don't make anymore, Storm made it, called a wee wart. I have probably 50 of those. So between the F7 and the this is an F7 flatfish. I use X4 flatfish and the X9 extreme quick fish and the wee warts. And all I do with these are basically swing them through the holes. So if I'm facing the river and the current's going to my right, I'm casting across current and I'm swinging these baits into the areas that the steelhead are laying. And the steelhead absolutely destroy these plugs. It will be one of the hardest hits that you've ever experienced in fishing, because they will move 6 feet to 10 feet off the spot that they're laying to crush this bait. There is no exact science on why they do this. There's 2 theories behind it, and I buy the theory that the steelhead are stocked and they go into Lake Erie and all they do is feed. They eat everything. They eat the little Asian beetles that float on the surface. They look like ladybugs. I've seen them feeding on those. They just open their mouths and they scoop them off the surface. They eat the mayflies. They eat the midges, emerald shiners. I mean, every bait that you can imagine, steelhead are eating, and they're constantly looking to fill their bellies. And then all of a sudden they go into the streams, and people think that they shut down off of that feeding response that they have to eat. I don't believe that they do. I think something flashy like this coming down, it triggers something in their brain to say, oh, I got to eat that, because that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. Some guys say that they hit these out of territoriality. Okay, it could be. I'm going to lean more towards their instincts on feeding on this. It's a great backup tactic. If I get up in the morning and I'm late going to a river, because today, if you don't get up early and get to your holes fast in Erie or in Ohio or anywhere, and this guy's laughing, he knows what I'm talking about. So if you don't do that, okay, this is your best option right here. I'm showing you guys something that's going to give you an option to go out and put some good numbers of fish up on the bank and have fun. Because you can use plugs, and if there's 10 guys in front of you that went through, say I'm fishing on the Grand River, I hit peak conditions, but I was up late because I worked the night before and I couldn't get there till 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, there was 10, 20 guys that went through all these holes on Route 84 ahead of me that beat up on all these fish already. Well, I could go in there in the middle of the day with this and catch the fish that they missed, and maybe even trigger some of the fish that they did catch. And it's as sure as anything. That's how effective this technique is. It's a choice. You have to make a decision what you're going to do that day. So if I decide I'm going to get there late, I'm grabbing my plug rod and my plug gear, and I'm going to go plugging, okay? It's a phenomenal technique that will give you an extra edge over the competition that's on the river that day. And I'm not saying that you should be competing against everybody, but it tends to get that way, unfortunately. But this is a great option. The other thing about this technique, and this is not many guys know this, but you will typically catch the biggest fish out of the holes on plugs. And the reason for that is the smaller fish tend to be more aggressive on feeding. So if a guy grabs his bait rod, goes through the holes, and then a fly rod guy casting egg patterns goes through the holes, and they pull 15 fish out of one hole, what happens are the smaller steelhead, the jacks and the smaller females and the smaller males, were the fish that are typically caught out of that hole first, because the bigger fish just don't, they're not positioning themselves that way. These fish are going to have the first pick at those baits. So in effect, what the bait fisherman did for you is clear those fish out. made them less likely to feed for you, and now you're coming in with this, and this is the first bait that actually got to the big fish, and you're going to catch a big fish on this. The biggest steelhead I've caught in Ohio, on the Niagara River, in New York, in Pennsylvania, have come on this. The biggest fish of my, and I've caught tens of thousands of steelhead, literally tens of thousands in my career, and the biggest fish have came on this. But not only that, you could put big numbers up with these plugs. You can have a big number day. Everybody's looking to see how many they can catch, and you can. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen to where you're putting big numbers up with them. But the key to this bait is it's big fish, and it's if you get there late. So something to keep in mind. Learn it. This is a plug rod, okay? This is actually a plug rod. This is designed specifically for this bait, and you'll see that all the sensitivity is in the tip of that rod. So when this plug's wobbling, I can feel it going across the hole. I can feel it wobbling, feel it wobbling, feel it wobbling, and then when a steelhead hits, it's there. It's it's a HMX graphite rod. It's a high modulus graphite, and it's designed specifically. I know the guy that actually designed this rod. I know the person that designed this rod, and he's a phenomenal master plug fisherman, if not phenomenal master. And I use this rod. I recommend it. It's a Fenwick 8'3" plug rod. And there are some other plug rods out there or something that will work, but what you're going to look for is that tip. You want a sensitive tip like that, okay, where this thing's wobbling and you're going to feel it. I could feel if I pick up a leaf on my plug, okay, or if a fish comes up and grabs it and slack lines the bait, I can feel that with this rod. So you really need to consider getting a separate rod. I use braided line. I'm using 15-pound Power Pro, and I have a fluorocarbon leader, okay, swiveled in, and a snap. So this takes care of any line twist that may occur. And I like to use a single snap. It's a good clean look going down. Other people use 8-pound mono, okay? I'm not afraid to use this low stretch. I like the low stretch. I like the extra sensitivity of the braid for this application. This comes down to a personal preference. I would say 80% of the other guys that are using plugs for steelhead are using 8 to 10-pound monofilament. Their reasoning behind that is that it's absorbing the shock of the strike. And I found that I'm not losing fish with the braid, so I'm satisfied with the braid, but they still think that that's going to help them land more fish. So that's a trade-off. It's going to come down to personal preference for anybody that's going to get into the plug area. Colors, it comes down to personal preference. I found I like the golds, chartreuses, the pirate. There's a series of pirate colors they call it. It's got a red bill with blue back. I have several. You could come up and look at my box of some of the selections I have. The natural perch color is really good. In clear conditions, you're going to want to go more natural colors, and in stained water, you're going to go to brighter golds and chartreuse colors and oranges. So you have to adapt your colorations to the flow. Any questions about plugs? No questions, okay. I'm going to get out of this gear section and get into when to go and where to go. In Erie, in the streams, elk, walnut, trout run, it's a little bit easier to figure out when to go because the rivers up here clean up so fast. It's a day, typically a day to 24 to 48 hour window, depending on how much rain you get. In Ohio, it's totally different than that. We have Conneaut Creek, Ashtabula River, Grand River, Chagrin River, Rocky River, and the Vermilion River, which are all bigger watersheds than the streams here. And the timing on the runoffs there would be the Ashtabula River would be the first to clear, probably one day after the streams in Pennsylvania clear. So you can literally chase the runoffs if you chose to do that. And so the first ones to clear are here, Ashtabula River. Then you're going to jump to the Chagrin River all the way into near Cleveland, the east side of Cleveland. Then the Conneaut Creek's going to clear. Conneaut and the Rocky River typically clear at the same time, depending on where the rains fall. And then the Grand River would be the last to clear. And the Grand is it's a big river. It's huge. And to give you an example, the Ashtabula River in Ohio drains 78 square miles of area. The Grand River drains 1,700 square miles. So that will give you the difference in size between those two fisheries. In Ohio, massive public access. We have really good public access. The Rocky River has the Metro Park system. It's all public access. Almost the entire length of the fishable sections of the Grand River from Harpersfield to the mouth is public. There are some sections of private water there. The Chagrin River, the first 6 miles is public access, and then you have some public access upstream. And now that all the dams have blown down on the Chagrin River, you can fish the Chagrin River from the mouth all the way up to the Chagrin Falls in Ohio. It opened up all this extra area, plus all the feeder streams and different branches of that. So I would start in PA, and as it gets clear, I would move west, okay? And I'm a runoff chaser myself. I look for clean, green conditions to fish in. The U.S. Geological Survey, if you go on there, there's websites that have the flows for each river in Ohio, and they also have them for the streams in PA. I would use that as a tool. In PA, you don't need it as much. In Ohio, if you don't want to spend your money on gas chasing the runoffs, you're going to look at the websites and look for the best flow. The best flows on the Grand River are going to be anywhere from 2 to 800, anywhere in there. The best flows on the Chagrin River are going to be between 170 or so and about 450 to 500 in that range. And that could vary depending on how much silt has washed off. That could change and vary by 100. The flow could change by 100. So it just depends on that day. The best time to be on the river is when that river is going to transition from mud to a green color, emerald green color. So as it's transitioning down is the time to be on the river. I'm not a big fan of fishing clear water. Sometimes we get stuck doing that like it is now. We have drought conditions currently, and you gotta just the way to combat that is downsize your offerings. Go super light line, small offerings, and you should be good. Steelhead, I'm going to give you some inside information about steelhead and their biology. What they see is what we see. They see what we see. So they perceive color the same way that we perceive color. So yes, they can see you standing on the side of the river. And yes, color matters on a daily basis in and out. It varies. So you have to be able to adapt to those color changes and condition changes. Wear camo clothing, wear drab clothing, greens, and don't move fast. be gentle in your wading. Don't go stomping down the bank, because they can see you, they can feel it. If there's one thing that you have to pay attention to, it would be that. So I'm into chasing the green rivers. If you learn to do that and you apply some of these basics, you're going to be able to go out and do this. One thing I haven't touched on is egg sacs. I do use egg sacs. I love using it as a bait. My primary go-to bait is Chinook eggs, and I obtain fresh Chinook eggs from New York. Treated Chinook eggs. I just use a clear water formula by ProCure to treat them, and but it's actually the third best egg to use for steelhead. The best egg to use for steelhead are brown trout eggs, if you can get them. If you can get them. The second best is actually steelhead eggs, if you want to kill fish, or you can obtain them from friends, or however you can get steelhead eggs. You're not allowed to sell steelhead eggs in Ohio or Pennsylvania. So the go-to bait would be Chinook eggs. I could give you a little tip about those. I use chartreuse and muddy to green conditions, and as the conditions get cleaner, I shift over to pink and then white. And then afterwards, if I'm using egg sacs, I use exclusively white in clear water conditions. Another little tip about the egg sac material, I use the squares when I tie my eggs, and I double the material. I use 2 sheets instead of 1 sheet of material. And the reason I do that is to add color to the egg sacs, and then it also enhances the ability for you to hook fish. And what I mean by that is steelhead have hundreds and hundreds of little teeth in their mouth. And by doubling up that egg sac, you're basically increasing the area that one of these teeth can catch that egg sac and hook into that material. Okay? And they could spit a bait out faster than you could blink your eye, faster than you could react to it. And I will say that 90% of the fish that you're going to hook on egg sacs are going to be fish that are trying to reject that egg sac. And that's why egg sacs work. And I'm just, by doubling that material, it's increasing the ability for it to work properly for you. At the beginning of the runoff, with egg sacs, I go big. I'm a little over the size of a nickel. And as the runoff goes down, you want to downsize your egg sacs. Okay, sometimes a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch in size with a white egg sac on a size 12 hook. Okay, but you can use a white egg sac and it will work in clear water conditions. I'm big on egg sacs. I love it as an approach. If I'm baiting, I'm using egg sacs. Any questions?
Should we use the pre-made ones in the store, or are they any good or not?
They will work. Again, they're tied with mesh. Okay, as far as options go, it would be bottom end option for me. If you're asking me my honest appraisal of them, will they work? Yes, because they have that mesh, and it's a representation of an egg, and the steelhead are going to grab it regardless of the scent, and you're just tricking them into grabbing it, and it's going to hold in their mouth for 1 to 3 seconds because of their teeth on that mesh, and that's going to give you the opportunity to get the hook in them. So that's, it's about proper presentation, and then they grab it. And the reason I know that they reject it immediately is because I've made direct observations of fish hitting the egg sacs, especially with the white ones. You could just see it. They swim up, grab it, and immediately they're shaking their head. I'll just let the float go down and sit. And within about 1.5 seconds, they're rejecting that thing. They're just shaking their head, going backwards, trying to get that egg sac out of their mouth. It's almost comical because they're just kind of writhing like a snake backwards in the hole. So this is how, through direct observation, I've learned that. So yeah, they will work. My recommendation is to buy egg sac tire and obtain fresh eggs somewhere. Okay, Chinook eggs, you can buy them online even. If you can't find them, you can get them online. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it. My time's up. So, thanks for coming today, and come up and visit us at Field and Stream in Erie. Okay, thanks.